Okay, guys, for today's lesson, you need this sheet that says factor a GCF first. So we're going to deal with more factoring today, but it's going to involve a little bit more difficult process where we're really going to put everything that we've learned together, factoring out, finding greatest common factors, and then factoring the resulting trinomial. You can use the box method, which you have now learned, or if you just like mental math, that's cool as well. So today with number one, looking at all three terms here, and I notice that they all do have a GCF. Okay, so my first thing I want to do is pull out the greatest common factor. So looking at all of these, I notice that 5 is my GCF. Okay, so I'm going to put back in parentheses, 5 times what's b squared? Well, 5 times b squared is 5b squared. And then 5 times what is negative 50b? It's negative 10b. And then last 5 times what is 125? Well, that's positive 25. Okay, so this 5 is factored out, which means the 5 just drops down. And the resulting trinomial then needs to be factored. Okay, and this is what we call, I notice both of these are perfect squares, which is going to make things a little bit easier. So b squared, there's only one way to get b times b. And then in the back there, 25 is a perfect square. So I know that's a 5 and a 5 to get that. But my middle term is a negative. So because of this is a negative and yet this is a positive, that means both of these had to be a negative. Okay, so this is technically my final answer. However, you will probably see it written something like this. Well, there will say 5 times the quantity b minus 5 squared. And that squared represents you got 2 of these parentheses there. Okay, moving on to number 2. Check it out. First thing you should always do is ask yourself, is there a GCF between these terms? I know they're all even, so you're going to at least pull out a 2, and that looks to be the biggest number you can pull out. So we factor out a 2, and you're left with x squared plus 7x plus 12. Okay, so again, I'm going to bring down that 2. That 2 has to stay along with your answer. And I'm going to break this up into 2 parentheses. So x squared, that gives me x times x. And then now I'm thinking of 2 numbers that multiply to 12, but add to 7. Again, if you can do this mentally, great. If not, and you want to apply that the box method, you can do that as well. So I know that both numbers have to be a positive, because all this is positive inside. And 4 times 3 is 12, as well as 4x and 3x gives you 7x. So this will be the final answer for number 2. Okay, moving on to number 3 here. Checking out, this one's going to be a little bit more difficult because the numbers are a little bit larger. You got 15, 48, 36. Okay, so the GCF I noticed with these is going to be 3. All right, so we're going to put back in here 5b squared plus 16b plus 12. Okay, now if you look what you got left here, this is like I said, a little bit more difficult, where you got, maybe you can't do it mentally, maybe you want to use that box method, and we'll just review the box method here. So again, with the box method, I want to multiply a term times the c term. So 5b squared times 12, that's going to give you 60. So 60b squared. But yet I need 2 factors that multiply to 60b squared, but they add up to 16b, this middle term. Okay, so I know that in this case, I think it's going to be a 10 and a 6. So 10b times 6b gives you that, and it also adds to this. Now remember, it doesn't matter where you put these. I could put that there. I could put this one there. I could flip it around. But the a term I should put here, and the c term I should put down here. Okay, so then I'm going to go straight across here, and I'm looking at a GCF. So the GCF between 10b and 12, that's just going to be a 2. And then going straight across here, 5b squared and 6b. I can tell that the GCF is just the letter B. Okay, then I'm moving this direction, and between these two terms, I notice that the GCF is going to be a 5b. And then last, with this term here, I know it's going to be just a 6. So now I piece it all back together. And remember, if you pull it out, there's no sign in front. That's technically a plus. Okay, so these are my resulting parentheses. Okay, when I piece it all back together, that 3 needs to remain. And then I take one of the parentheses, say b plus 2. Take the other one. It really doesn't matter what order you put it in. 5b plus 6. And that is our final answer for number 3. All right, moving on to number 4 here. Again, I see these are all even, so at least I'm going to pull a 2 out. You know, I try to think, well, does maybe 7 go into these? No. Okay, if 7 doesn't go in there, 14 is not going to go in there. So 2 is going to be my only option. So I pull a 2 out and then write what's left. So that'd be a 7k squared minus 41k and minus 56. All right. So at this point, you can go ahead and, like I said, either do mental math with this or use a box method. The numbers are going to be a little bit larger here because you got this 56, 41. Maybe I'll just try to do it mentally, see what I can come up with. I know there's a little bit of an advantage because 7k squared, there's only one way to get that, 7k times k. All right, and then what's going to be possible options here is this negative 56. You know, you got, think of all the options for 56. 2 and 28. You know, you got 7 and 8, obviously. 4 and 14. I'm trying to think if there's any others I missed there. But again, 2 numbers that multiply to a negative 56, but they got to add up to a negative 41k right here. All right, so when I'm thinking about this one here, I'm thinking, well, what can get me to negative 41k but add up to negative 56? One has to be a positive, one has to be a negative, but the resulting answer when I add them will be a negative answer here. And I'm going to try a positive 8, which means I'm going to come over here and do a negative 7. So this does multiply to negative 56. You know, 8 times k, that is 8k. Negative 7 times 7k, that is negative 49k. And when I add those two together, that does result in that negative 41k. So it's just by chance that we happen on the correct combination for this first one. All right, number 5. We see this one here, 32n squared minus 40n minus 28. I see it, they're all even, but then I ask myself, is there any other number that could go into it? And in this case, it looks like the number 4 goes in there. So I'm going to pull a 4 out. So 4, I get 8n squared minus 10n, and then last minus 7. Okay, I'm going to break this up here. And maybe I'll do box method again with this one, just to kind of review that. So I'm going to take 8 times the negative 7, so your A term and your C term. And I know that's going to be a negative 56n squared. So 2 numbers that multiply to negative 56n squared, but add up to negative 10n. All right, so what could that be? So we got maybe a 8. So I'm thinking here. One's got to be positive. One's got to be a negative. Possibly, I'm thinking maybe a 14 and a 4. Because 8 and 7, you're not going to get a difference of negative 10. But a 14 and 4, you're going to get a difference of a negative 10 here. And because the difference is negative, that means my larger number needs to be a negative. So I'm going to say negative 14n and positive 4n. Okay, so my A term I'll put there, and my C term I put back here. Okay, I'm going to start with this bottom row. And if I pull out a GCF, I see my leading one is a negative. So I want to pull out a negative with that. And it's going to be a -7. Up top here, looks like your GCF is going to be a 4N. And then if I move vertically, 8 and 14. Largest number is 2, but they also share at least an N. And then last, 4N minus 7. Remember, if nothing, they don't share anything, technically it's a 1. And it's going to be a positive 1 because this leading term was a positive. So when I put that back together, I still had that 4 that was outside that needs to drop down. And then you have your 2N plus 1 for the top here. And then multiplied by the 4N minus 7. And that is my final answer for that one. Okay, number 6. Checking out number 6 here, we see, yes, they're all even. Okay, can anything else go into it? A 3 goes into this one. It goes into 24. 112, well, if I take 1 plus 1 plus 2, that's 5. 5 is not divisible by 3, so 3 doesn't work. So it looks like it's probably just going to be the 2 that I can pull out. So I'm going to pull a 2 out, which means I'm left with 9k squared minus 56k plus 12. Okay, so I'm going to, again, go ahead and set up the box method for this one. And I'm going to take my A term, multiply by my C term. So 9 times 12, and we get 108k squared, but it's got to add up to negative 56k. All right, so one's positive, one's negative. I'm sorry, actually both of them, the answers are going to be a negative, and they have to add up to the negative 56. So two numbers that multiply to 108, but add up to negative 56. And with that, you can start breaking that down. So, 2 and 54. Well, right away I see if I do 2 and 54, that does multiply to 108. And if they're both negatives, they are going to add up to negative 56. So that's going to be that combination. So I'm going to put a negative 2k here and a negative 54k there. Okay, my A term goes up top, my C term on the bottom. Okay, if I'm finding a GCF for this bottom row, because of this leading term is a negative, I'm going to pull out a negative 2. Okay, up top here, my GCF between the numbers is a 9, because 9, 54, I'll pull out a 9. I can also pull out a k because they both share a k. And then if I go vertically, I see the only thing they have in common is a k. And then last over here, my vertically this way, my leading term is a negative, so I'll pull that out. And then I think between 12 and 54, what could you pull out that they both share? 2, definitely. Even a 3, but even more, it's going to be a 6. So 6 is the largest number that goes into both of those. Okay, piece it all back together. You can't forget about that 2 that you factored out in the beginning. So we'll place that 2 back, and then you have your 9k minus 2 multiplied by the k minus 6. All right, you guys go ahead and do number 7. Do number 8. Go ahead and do 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and last, number 16.